Well, it's been quite a journey. We have seen evidence that life in this world can be troublesome, yes?
Yes.
One thing after another.
Yep.
And it's sometimes things seem to be going along so smoothly, and boom, all of a sudden here's a problem. We don't really want those problems, but we have to deal with them either way. If we're to succeed, we have to really pay attention, and we really need to walk with the Lord. Are you with me?
Yes.
Now, Jesus overcame the trial of aloneness, and I have condensed I'm just doing the review of the messages we've gone through, but Jesus was relatively alone when he went to the cross. Very difficult time for him, and he dealt with that. Jochebed dealt with hopelessness. She had been in the nation of Israel, but she was at the tail end of 400 years of slavery. But she had a baby, and she really wanted him to live, and she prayed, and she came up with a plan, and she didn't know that that child that she saved would one day save the nation, which is awesome. And then Simon Peter had to learn to overcome failure. He made a big mistake. He made a lot of big mistakes. I love him. It's good that he's in the Bible, because we realize that God deals with regular people that make mistakes, and he still helps us to move on and be productive. And then Deborah overcame fear. She was living in a time when there was a very, very bad military of people not too far north of where she was, and they were being tortured for 20 years by that group. And God led her to stand up to them, and she overcame fear, and they won that battle. And then we move on, and Thomas had to overcome doubt. That's why he's called Doubting Thomas. And not easy for him, because he had all the evidence he needed to know that Jesus had resurrected. And still, when all of the other disciples said, "Hey, we've seen him, he's alive," he said, I won't believe it until I see it. So he's a Baptist. And then we have Esther, who had to overcome evil. She was living in a difficult time, and there were those who wanted to completely annihilate her people, her nation. And God put her in a position where she might be able to influence the king, but it was risky. And she took that risk because she wanted to stand up for her people, and God blessed her for it. And then we have Job, who stood up against injustice. I say injustice because he didn't do anything wrong to bring the problems onto himself that he faced. In fact, it was because of his righteousness that those things were happening. And so if you're being tortured because of your righteousness, sometimes it's hard to know, well, what do I do to try to get rid of these kinds of problems? So Job had some difficult times as well. And then we come to Ruth today. And Ruth is, I think, a very good woman. And she's a person who looked at the options in front of her. There was an easy road. There was a difficult road.
Yes.
She took the difficult road. We'll talk about that and why that's so significant. This brings us to our current study, and she placed the concerns of others above herself. It's one of the things that you see when you read the story of Ruth. You say, you know what? She really had a love for her mother-in-law,
Yes,
who had just lost everything. And you can imagine how devastated she was. If you were in that situation, you'd be devastated as well. And so she had a love for her and a desire to help her. And her story of faithfulness and loyalty and sacrifice is a very, very significant story. Sometimes the right thing to do is not the easy thing to do. It might go against all of the advice that other people are giving you. Oh, you need to do this. Oh, this would be the best thing. And it might sound like the best thing, but it may not be the right thing. And so she chose to do the right thing. So we're going to study her story. She's one of only 2 women who have a book in the Bible named after them.
Yes.
So we can't ignore them when we do this study, correct? We got to get them in there. And so we dealt with Esther, and now we're dealing with Ruth. God has a special plan for Ruth. She was raised in a foreign land that worshipped idols. One particular idol, she would convert to the worship of Jehovah, and her family tree would later on include King David. And not only that, Jesus himself. So God used her in a very special way, and it's really quite impressive what God did with her. So let's go to Ruth chapter 1, verse 1. Now it came about in the days when the judges governed that there was a famine in the land. That's not a good thing. Because if there's a famine, you don't have food. And if everybody's hungry, then that makes you desperate. A certain man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the land of Moab with his wife and his 2 sons. Why did he go there? Because of the famine. He's looking for food. He wants to provide for his family. And so they go to the land of Moab. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife, Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem in Judah. Now they entered the land of Moab and remained there. So here's the story. A woman and her husband and their 2 sons can't survive in the land where they've been raised. And so they go to another place looking for food, looking for an opportunity to provide for their family. And they had to cross over across the Dead Sea to the other side to the land of Moab. And that's where they chose to live. And they went there because they felt that they could find some food in that place. Now, a short history lesson will help us here so we can understand this a little bit. I want you to look at that map. You see the land of Moab there, right? It's pink. It's sticking right in our faces. And that little curved line there is the journey from Bethlehem around the northern end of the Dead Sea and then down into the land of Moab. It's about a 50-mile walk. It's a pretty good walk. Now, it was also pretty rugged terrain because from Bethlehem up in the hills of Judea down to the Dead Sea, we're talking going down about 3,000 feet. And you're doing it on foot and taking all the possessions that you can afford to carry with you. So it was not an easy journey for them. Now, Moab has played a significant role in the biblical narrative on a number of occasions. And I just want to remind you of this because you've heard of the land of Moab, but how does it play into the biblical narrative? Abram felt that he and Lot needed to separate from one another because they both had herds that were so large that there was conflict between their people, so we need to separate. So they stood on the top of the hill, and then Abram said to Lot, he said, listen, you can go to the left down there in the plains, or you can stay up here in the hills of Judea, whatever you want to do. You tell me, you go left, I'll go right. You go right, I'll go left, you tell me. Well, Lot chose to go down to the beautiful, at that point, beautiful land down in the valley. And he thought that was the most productive, and that's where he wanted to be, and that's the land that would become the land of Moab. So Lot ends up going into Moab. There's some cities there that were pretty infamous, yes? Sodom and Gomorrah, and some things that happened there. We'll deal with that in just a moment. Genesis 13, verse 9. Is not the whole land before you? Please separate from me. If to the left, I will go to the right. If to the right, then I will go to the left. I think Abraham is being very generous with his nephew because he's the one that God has called to build the Jewish nation and to take to inhabit the promised land and all those kinds of things. So it's a big time. Lot lifted up his eyes. He saw all the valley of the Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt as you go to Zoar. And so it was a beautiful area. So Lot chose for himself all the valley of the Jordan. In other words, he said, well, of the two, that's the most beautiful, I'll go there. Well, that's what you would expect your immature nephew to say. And so he said, all right. And so Lot journeyed eastward, and they separated from each other. Lot chose to live in the land that would later become the land of Moab. And that's where we had the problem in Sodom and Gomorrah. You remember that? And Abraham had to intervene because Lot was going to go down with the terrible people who were living there if he wasn't rescued. And the only way he could be rescued is for someone to grab him by the lapel and say, we're getting out of here. And that's what Abraham did with Lot. And the place was destroyed behind him. Lot had a hard time dealing with that, and he spent some time up in the hills and drinking and getting drunk, and his two daughters were impregnated by him while he was drunk. Now that was their choice. I don't know that he even knew what was going on. It's not really our problem, but the fact is he had two pregnant daughters as a result of that. So Next verse. Thus both the daughters of Lot were with child by their father. Now that's not a good thing, right?
No, it's not.
It's not even in the olden days, that's not a good thing.
No.
The firstborn bore a son and called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. If you want to know where the Moabites came from, that's where they came from. As for the younger, she also bore a son and called his name Ben-Ami. He is the father of the sons of Ammon to this day. So the Moabites and the Ammonites were not friends of Israel. These were not Jewish people. These were people with a very, very different background than that. So now we have this land of Moab, and they have their own god. They don't worship Jehovah. They worship this really weird-looking thing called Chemosh. Chemosh was known as the destroyer, the subduer. Now, I've never referred to our God as the destroyer. He can destroy when he needs to.
Oh, yes.
This guy was known by his worshipers as a destroyer. And so that's the God that they were serving. Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 28. Are we doing okay so far?
Yep.
Now, when Moses took the children of Israel out of Egypt and he was taking them to the promised land, we have another encounter with Moab. He had to go through the land of Moab to get to the promised land. You see at the top of the screen there? Go backward if you will. You see where Moab is circled? And the red line is the children of Israel coming through the land of Moab to go around the Dead Sea and into the promised land. Well, they asked for the ability to pay for their free passage. And the Moabites agreed to that. Some of the other groups did not, but the Moabites did agree to that. And so they were able to go through there. But it's interesting because on that journey, as they're coming up to the promised land, Moses has been leading the nation now for this 40 years in the wilderness and all that's been going on. And he stands on a mountain and God talks with him. He says, Moses, you really messed up. You didn't obey me when I told you what to do about the water from the rock. You disobeyed me. You're not going into the promised land. And so he had a talk with God right there on the top of the mountain. God expects his people to be obedient, and he absolutely expects his leaders to be obedient to him, correct? Mm-hmm. And so he told Lot that he told Moses that he was not going to go into the promised land. And so Moses died and was buried in the land of Moab. Now, my wife is a Bible reader. She loves to read the Bible every morning. She reads through the Bible every year. She's been doing this for years. I don't know how many years, but a lot. And I know that because when I wake up around 6:30, she'll come in and say, you know what, I've been reading the Bible today, and then here it comes. And do you know what this means, and how does that relate to this? And I'm going, I don't know, I'm not even awake yet. So I've been listening to her reflect on the scriptures that she's studying and stuff, and it's always interesting to me. And but we had an interesting conversation about this, which just cracked me up. Because I was telling her about the land of Moab, and I said, you know, that's where Moses died and was buried. She said, God buried him. I said, I know that. She goes, well, that's important to tell them, folks. That's an important item. I said, in my sermon, I plan to tell them that, but I'm just talking to you in our living room. And so still, I need to get it right. So God buried him, and no one knows where he was buried. But once again, the land of Moab. You see, in my old age, I have a young wife who is so helpful to me. And that's a good thing.
You're lucky, young wife.
All right, so Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 28. You will sell me food for money so that I may eat, and give me water for money so that I may drink. Only let me pass through on foot, just as the sons of Esau who live in Seir and the Moabites who live in Ar did for me, until I cross over the Jordan into the land which the Lord our God is giving to us. The Moabites did what? They allowed them to pass through safely. That's a good thing. It's good that they did something right. Correct?
Right. Yeah.
Chapter 34, let's go on. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him. Who buried him? God did. in the valley, in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor, but no man knows his burial place to this day. Well, we don't know his burial place, but we do know that he was buried in the land of Moab somewhere, correct? All right, so that's very important. All right, now let's move on. There's a picture of the land of Moab from looking up from way up high. You see the Dead Sea to the right side there. You see it? Yeah. And there's the plain of Moab. So somewhere out there Moses was buried. And so as you're looking at it from the promised land, you can see that valley out there, which was later on referred to as the land of Moab. Okay, so let's move on. Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. Now, I don't know how I skipped that, but let me just say this. These guys left the land of Israel, Judea, because there was a terrible drought.
Yes.
And they wouldn't be able to survive.
Yes.
And so husband and wife, Elimelech and Naomi, took their 2 sons, and they headed off to the land of Moab. And they went there to get food. So they get down there, and it's not as easy as they hoped it would be. They were there about 10 years. They took for themselves, the sons did, Moabite women as wives. The name of one was Orpah, not to be confused with the whale that used to be a big hit in San Diego. No, that's a different story. Orpah, that was Orpah. And the name of the other, Ruth, and they lived there about 10 years. So now we have Naomi and her husband, Elimelech, and then we have the 2 sons, and they've married now. They've married women from Moab, and Ruth is one of them. Now we have a family of 3 men and 3 women. Now that's great until things start to go bad. And that's what happened. Let's go to the next verse. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died. Her husband died and then 2 sons. How much bad luck do you need in your life? You leave your family and your homeland because of a serious drought. You go into a strange land with strange gods and different things going on there, but you want to survive. And so now you've got your husband and 2 sons to work the fields and provide food for you, so that's a good thing. Husband dies, that's a big hit, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you still have your 2 sons, so that's a good thing. At least we have them. They can go out and work and provide for the family. Then the 2 sons die.
Yeah.
Now, if you were her, you'd say, what did I do wrong?
No.
I mean, I think she really, in fact, I know she thought that God was angry with her. Why would these things happen to her? The 3 men in their lives all died. So they died, and the woman was bereft of her 2 children and her husband. And she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the land of Moab, for she had heard in the land of Moab that the Lord had visited his people in giving them food back in Judea, okay, or the land of Judah. And so if they have food there, it's better for her to go back home. She's lost her husband. She's lost her 2 sons. She's really, really bereft of help here. She's in a foreign place, and she decided, I just need to go back home, because at least she has some family back there. So she departed from the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. So that's where they were headed. They were going to go back to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, go, return each of you to her mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. Now let's stop there for just a moment. Naomi is saying to her daughters-in-law, you need to stay home with your family. This is where you were raised. This is where your friends are. This is where your families are. You need to stay here. That's for your protection. That's the better choice for you. You're young enough. You'll find another husband. You can start over, and God will bless you. And so I'm going to go back to my people, but I want you to stay here with your people. And so may the Lord grant that you may find rest, each in the house of her husband. Then she kissed them. They lifted up their voices and wept, and they said to her, no, but we will surely return with you to your people. So their first response was, we want to go with you. They've been together 10 years. And they wanted to stay with her. And one of the reasons I think they wanted to stay with her is because they were concerned about how she might survive as a single older lady moving back into a land where she's going to have to provide for herself. That's going to be tough. And so for them to say, no, we're not going to leave you, she said, no, you've got to do what's best for you. You following this dialogue?
Yes.
You got to do what's best for you. And so she's encouraging them to stay. Go back to your family. There will be someone who will marry you, and you can raise a family, and good things will happen for you. And so that's what she encouraged them to do. She could not guarantee their future. I mean, the luck she's been having, she couldn't guarantee her future. She's crawling back home, hoping that maybe she'll be able to survive if she's back home in the land of, around Bethlehem, correct? And so she tells the girls to leave and to go back their own way. And so we go to the text. Next passage. But Naomi said, return, my daughters. Why should you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that may be your husbands? And even if I did, are you going to wait that long to get married till I have a child, and that child grows up and is old enough to be a husband to you, and by that time you'll be so much older? Doesn't make sense for you to stay with me. The best thing for you is to go back home, find a husband. Your family will take care of you until you do, and that's the best thing for you. Would you therefore wait until they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is harder for me than for you, for the hand of the Lord has gone forth against me. She was hurting,
Yes.
don't you think?
Yes, she was.
And I can understand that. Because there's times when you feel like everything is going against you. The only breaks you get are bad breaks. You know what I'm saying? And you're praying and praying that the Lord would do something to help you out of it. But so far you haven't seen that door that gets you out of the mess. You just find yourself entrenched in one problem after another after another. I can understand why this woman would be really depressed. Her husband dies. Her 2 sons die. Now she's alone. She can't take these girls. She can't take care of them. She can't provide for them. They need to go back to their families, and she's going to crawl back home, and it's going to be a very, very difficult time. So she's got those 2 options. Stay in the land of Moab with your own family, remarry someone from your own people, and that's less risky, and that's what I'm encouraging you to do. Do you understand that?
Yes.
The second thing they could do is accompany Naomi to her land and help her survive, and hope that things will work out for the 2 of them. This appears to be an act of faith and devotion or insanity. I don't know which one it is. But I can understand Ruth saying, I love my mother-in-law. They've been there for 10 years.
Yeah.
And she's saying in her heart, I don't want her to suffer. I don't want her to not be able to survive because she's all by herself. She can't go out and work the fields and take care of herself. She can't. And Ruth believes that if she's with her, she can provide that for her. So I just want you to see the compassion and the love and the heart of this woman, Ruth, who has her mother-in-law's concerns above her own. She wants to do what's right for her. She wants to take care of her. That's a very healthy and very positive thing, don't you think?
Yes.
God looks at the what? He looks at the heart. When he sees Ruth, he sees a good heart, does he not?
Yes, it does.
Now, one of the daughter-in-laws did go back to her family. Ruth refused because she was a woman and she's stubborn. And when she's got her mind made up, you don't need to talk to her about it anymore, correct?
Yeah.
I mean, men can be stubborn, but if we do it, we're just imitating our wives. We've learned it there. So we don't have stubbornness built into us. And I'm going to get out of the service while you're in prayer, and I'll be in the car. Honey, you can get her right home. They lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her mother-in-law. Then she said, behold, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. But Ruth said, do not urge me to leave you or to turn back from following you. Listen to this statement.
This is it.
This rocks.
Okay.
For where you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, your God, my God. That's quite a statement.
Yes.
I'm going with you. I'm staying with you. I know you've had a tough time, but I'm not leaving you like this. I'm not going to send you back home like this. I'm going to go with you. And this is a spiritual decision as well. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. Thus may the Lord do to me and worse, if anything but death parts you and me. I'm not leaving you till you are dead or I'm dead. It's the only way that our friendship and partnership in this family, it's the only way that's going to be divided. Are you with me?
Uh-huh.
When she saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more to her. But I got to believe that in Naomi's heart, with all that had been going wrong, I'll bet she really cherished the love and devotion of this daughter-in-law, who said, I will not leave you alone. Where you go, I will go. I don't care where that is. You tell me where you're going, I'm with you. You know, there's just something about that that says, I value you. And I'm more concerned about your welfare than I am about my own welfare. That's the heart of Ruth.
Yes.
That's why I think she was such a special person for God to use in a very special way.
Amen.
And so she's saying, I'm not going to leave you, I'm going to stay with you. And finally, Naomi realizes that Ruth is as stubborn as her, and she's not going to go back home, so she might as well take her with her. And I'll bet in her heart she was so grateful to have her. That journey of 50 miles back up through the mountains would have been very difficult for both of them. It would have been extremely difficult for one woman traveling alone and dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
And so to have her with her, I think this is, for Naomi, this is a very, very special thing and a blessing. So we pick up. So Naomi returned, and with her Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, who returned from the land of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. Well, things are looking up if there's a barley harvest, right?
Yes.
Because she left there because of a severe drought. She comes back in, and it's time for the harvest. And so these two ladies show up onto the scene. Everything's great. Ruth begins to work in the fields and doing what a lot of the other ladies are doing. They're gleaning behind the farmers that are taking their crop first, but the stuff that falls behind, the ladies can pick up and take for themselves. So she's out there working as hard as she can in the heat to provide not just for herself, but for her mother-in-law. And I suspect every day when she came in and she's saying, I've got to take a shower, I'm so hot. I suspect that mother-in-law just thanked God for that girl every day she came back home. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
Man, what a special, special person. But she was determined to provide for the two of them. Let's go to the next passage. Then Boaz. We don't know anything about Boaz, but he was a gentleman that was living, he was an Israelite. He was living in Bethlehem, in that environment. And Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, whose young woman is this? She was probably cute. And he thought, well, she's really hot. I mean, and she was hot, but I mean, she was hot. Double hot. Yeah, but she's both. And Boaz was attracted to her. He thought, man, she's working so hard out there. This is really a quality person. She's not lazy. She's not sitting at home complaining. She's out there trying to take care of her family. The servant in charge of the reapers replied, she is the young Moabite woman who returned with Naomi from the land of Moab. Then Boaz said to Ruth, listen carefully, my daughter. Do not go to glean in another field. Furthermore, do not go on from this one, but stay here with my maid. Stay here with my people, and they will make sure that you have plenty of food. They're going to take care of you. You're not on your own anymore. Don't go to those other fields. It can get rough out there. People can push you around. They can take stuff away from you. It can get ugly. And the fact is, he could provide protection for her so that she could reap the harvest that's needed for her and her mother-in-law to survive. So God had a plan for this faithful and selfless young woman. I can't take you through all the details of Boaz discovering her and deciding, boy, I'm really interested in her. But what he recognized immediately was that she needed someone to help redeem her former husband's life and his place in the land of Israel. Now that doesn't really affect us so much. We don't think about that. If a woman dies and she didn't have a son, no one says, oh, there was no one to take on your home, your property and stuff and keep the family line alive. But in the Jewish times, that was very, very important to them.
Yes, it was.
And to know that Naomi's 2 sons had died, her husband died, she is left with nothing. Here's a woman who's struggling to provide for them, and he is touched by her love and commitment to her mother-in-law, and he wants to help her any way that he can, and he discovers that, you know what, her husband was a relative of his. Not the closest. There was one other person that was a closer relative.
Yes.
And this is very important in the story. But he's decided, I love that woman. She's awesome. And I want to help her any way I can. And so he tried to check it out and see what was going on and what could be done to help her. So he wanted to find out who really had that role to help her by marrying her and having a child that could carry on her former husband's name in the Jewish community. Are you with me in this? I know it may seem kind of confusing, but that's just what I do. Okay? So, verse 10. Then she fell on her face, bowing to the ground, and said to him, why have I found favor in your sight that you should take notice of me, since I'm a foreigner? It's a good question. Boaz said, you're so cute, though. That's not in the Hebrew text.
That's a loose translation.
But I'm just assuming that had to be a part of it. It's not all of it. Boaz replied to her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law after the death of your husband has been fully reported to me. He is impressed by who she is. The heart. To give your life, to help your mother-in-law the way you have, that really touched him. I thought, man, this is a very special person. And how you left your father and your mother in the land of your birth and came to a people that you did not previously know. May the Lord reward your work and your wages be full from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to seek refuge. You've not just come to this land to take care of your mother. You came under the wings of the God of Israel. And I want to make sure that you are provided for. So he was deeply concerned about her, was he not?
Yes.
He knew that there was one other family member that was closer in the family line than he was to her former husband. That person had the right of redeeming that man's life and future, okay? And so that's what the Jews intended to do. Someone was to redeem him, his property, whatever would come in the line of the family that would have been his, someone has to provide that. So they need a son. They need someone that can do that. So he's concerned about that. She needs to have a son because that son would be the next in line for the family. Now, I hope I'm not confusing you. But the point is, he knows that someone needs to marry this girl, give her a son so they have a future. And so he goes to the next of kin and says to him, hey, this not very attractive lady over here that's working so hard and sweaty. You know, don't know much about her, but it'll probably be a big load for you. But you're the one next in line, and so I mean, I know it's going to be problematic, but it's your responsibility. So maybe you should marry her and give her a son so that her family line can continue. I don't know that he said it that way. But the other guy said, there's a complication, and there was a complication with his own line if he did this, and so he refused, which is just exactly what Boaz wanted to hear. Okay, well, I guess I'll have to do it. I guess I'll do it. And so he decides to offer to fill in that place for Ruth. Let's look at this real quick. What are the responsibilities of that next of kin? Hit that next one, Court. Now, I know it's kind of weird, but I didn't make that slide. I just found it and I liked it. When I make them, they're not that fancy. What was the kinsman redeemer required to do for a family member who passed away and there was no male in the line of descent to take over his property and his namesake. There are three things that they were to do. Number one, redeem property and or relatives. Keep them in the family. Number two, provide an heir through marriage. That's why she needs a son. So there will be someone who can inherit anything that would have come to him. And then thirdly, to avenge the unlawful death of a family member, the avenger of blood. You may have heard of that in the past. It's not relevant here because he wasn't murdered. If so, then he may need to go out and take care of that as well. But what I want you to see is that in Jewish law, there were certain things that were expected of the next of kin to provide for his family member who lost his life and was not able to carry out those responsibilities for the family. Boaz knows about this. He knows that it's important. And he's talked with the next of kin. He said, I can't do it. Boaz says, no problem. I won't talk to you again. Slap me high five. See you later. And he goes back to tell Ruth, you know what? I think maybe we need to talk about something. So Ruth 4, verse 13. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. And he went into her, and the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. So now Ruth has a male child. That child is carrying on Naomi's line, okay? And her former husband's line. But still, Boaz, and I didn't go through all the stuff about laying on the ground next to his feet and stuff, which is a really interesting Hebrew tradition, which we don't do anymore, thank goodness. Those feet can be pretty stinky. They've been in the field all day. So they settled down in the town of Bethlehem. I'm preaching the best I can. My wife can't write the sermon for me, you know. And so then we have the little town of Bethlehem. You're familiar with the little town of Bethlehem, right? We used to sing about that. And so they live there, and Boaz marries her, and things start to look up. And God blesses them with a child. So the hard work that she put in, now she's married to someone who's very wealthy. He's got all kinds of servants. They'll bring in all, you don't have to work the fields anymore. All you got to do is relax, bring mom-in-law over here, and we'll just enjoy our lives together. So Ruth 4, verse 16. Then Naomi took the child and laid him in her lap and became his nurse. I don't know how that worked, but we're just going to accept that. The neighbor women gave him a name, saying, a son has been born to Naomi. So they named him Obed. He is the father of Jesse, will be the father of Jesse. And Jesse was the father of King David. Wow. Here's a woman living in a strange land with strange gods. This family moves in there, and all of a sudden the husband dies. You marry one of the sons, they both die. And man, it's just a mess. Everything is so messed up. But God saw this woman who loved her mother-in-law to stay with her, to help her, to make sure that she was provided for. And God was impressed with that heart. And it's fitting that she would become a part of the nation of Israel that would lead to the birth of the most prominent king in the history of Israel, King David. Yes?
Yes.
So you have the tribe of Judah, Naomi and Elimelech. Chilion and Mahlon, they are both dead, and so is Elimelech. But then Ruth was tied to Mahlon, and now she's married to Boaz, and they have Obed, they have Jesse, and then David, which I think is very, very cool. But that's not all. That's not all. Because the line of David led to the birth not just of another king, but of the King of Kings. Yes?
Yes.
Jesus would be buried through that family line. Well, what a turn of events for Ruth. She married someone because I suppose that she loved him and felt that they could have a life together. He dies. Brother dies. Their father dies. Everything is messed up. The other daughter-in-law goes to go back home and live with her family. Ruth stayed with Naomi all the way through this. And God, step by step, provided for her, took care of her, blessed her, and used her in a very special way to introduce the Messiah to the world.
Yeah.
I think that is really, really cool.
Yeah.
It's a Hebrew word. It's translated into English as awesome.
Yeah.
Her family tree included King David and the King of Kings, Jesus himself. Man.
Amen.
And why should she be in that line, and why should this story be in the Bible? Because that is a remarkable woman. And her heart, her concern for Naomi, her self-sacrifice, her loyalty, her faithfulness, all of that. This is a very special person. Thank God we got her out of Moab, where she could come to know the God of Israel and live with God's people and bear great fruit. God is good, yes?
Yes.
Let's stand. I don't know what God has in store in the future for anybody. Don't know what he has in store for me. But until he lets me know, I am loving being here with you. I'm enjoying it very much. God looks at the heart. If the heart is right, God can bless you in ways that are beyond measure. If your heart is right, he can use you to accomplish things that you would never dream of. And there was no way in the world that this young lady would have thought when she married Boaz, boy, this is going to change my life and I'm going to be such an important person someday and people are going to be reading the Bible and my name is going to be in there. She'd had none of that. Didn't know any of that. She just knew that God was being gracious to her and God blessed her. He's a God of blessing. And I think we need to recognize in the hardships that we go through, keep walking, keep believing, keep trusting him. God will come through for you.
Yes, he will.
Just keep that heart where it needs to be, and God will bless you. Amen?
Amen.
Lord God, what a story for us.